join us on this journey to discover whether an assisted suicide organisation can be opened in Wales. In order to fully understand whether or not an assisted suicide facility can be replicated in Wales, first and foremost, it needs to be made clear that assisted suicide, assisted dying, and euthanasia are not the same.
Assisted dying allows a terminally ill person the choice over the manner and timing of their imminent death. Euthanasia is the deliberate act of ending a person's life to relieve suffering. Assisted suicide is defined as intentionally, knowingly, and directly providing the means of death to another person so that the person can use that means to commit suicide. In the following interview, this person wished to remain anonymous. Therefore, an actor and an actor's voice has been used and distorted.
The topic of assisted suicide is a moral and legal minefield. It's also a topic which is incredibly polemical, and there are very strong arguments on each side of the debate. This topic is also one that is multi-layered. For instance, there is a difference when talking about assisted suicide in terms of terminally ill individuals who, even if treated, would not enjoy a reasonable standard of life compared to those who might wish to end their lives for various personal reasons. Unfortunately, the term assisted suicide is used broadly as a catch-all term for a number of things. Bearing these points in mind, it is fair to say that the issue of assisted suicide is very complex and it needs to be approached sensitively.
Assisted suicide is regrettably a growing phenomenon within the UK, especially in Wales, with recent high-profile cases such as Jackie Baker, which has ignited the debate: should there be a facility in Wales to accommodate for people's needs, the right to die? In early 2015, Jackie Baker, 59, mother of two from Morriston, Swansea, was diagnosed with motor neuron disease. Her health was quickly deteriorating, with speech fading, and was left wheelchair-bound, not being able to do the things that she loved. By July 2015, she decided she wanted to die with dignity.
February before, I noticed this bit was getting weaker. I was doing a lot of DIY and gardening in there, and playing musical instruments. By August, I couldn't press the strings on the ukulele. I couldn't play it, and that was heartbreaking.
Many people, like Jackie, have travelled from their homes in the UK to Zurich, Switzerland. In fact, 292 Britons have travelled to Zurich since 2002. Of these, there have been 3 high profiles of 3 people travelling from Wales to Zurich. So what's the attraction to Zurich?
Dignitas is a Help to Life and Right to Die not-for-profit member society, a self-determination and dignity advocacy group, and they claim not to be a clinic. British press have said that there is a clinic in Zurich, which we just described as Dignitas. But Dignitas say that there are no doctors or nurses around in wards, no emergency room, no facilities for patients to stay for days or weeks to be treated. Furthermore, Dignitas explicitly state that they do not have clients and are not a business and does not sell anything. There are those that sign up for membership, and they are then members.
I do not really know a huge amount about Dignitas, if I'm honest, yet I am deeply suspicious of an organisation that creates, it could be argued, a market of death. My view is that you treat, protect, heal if possible, or grant relief and comfort. Promoting an allegedly acceptable option of death is not, to me, a valid option.
So how is this possible? The law in Switzerland states that whoever, from selfish motives, induces another person to commit suicide or aids him in it, shall be confined in the penitentiary for not over 5 years, or in the prison, provided that the suicide has either been completed or attempted. The assisted dying law in Switzerland is not heavily regulated. Organisations take it upon themselves to create guidelines and rules. Dignitas require the patient to be of clear judgment, having incurable and unbearable pain and or have a terminal illness. Dignitas scrutinises its patients and they have to adhere to certain criteria. This process can take months and even sometimes years. There have been no reports of abuse of this law. I'm here at the Senedd, the home to the Welsh politics. As Wales is a devolved government, they only have 20 legislations that they can vote on. Although the UK Parliament remains sovereign, some powers are devolved to Scotland and Wales. Wales does not have legislative powers or full financial powers. The 20 matters that Wales can vote include health and health services, but not criminal law. Wales can legislate on other matters reserved by the UK Parliament, but need to request a legislative competency order and have it approved by the Secretary of State for Wales, both Houses of Parliament and the Queen's Council. The UK's legal stance on assisted suicide is outlined in the Suicide Act 1961. It is an illegal act which can result in up to 14 years imprisonment. The Suicide Act 1961 is listed under the matter of criminal law and is not devolved to the Welsh Government.
The present laws, though they were framed some time ago, are probably broadly satisfactory.
The Lord Falconer's Bill was introduced to Parliament to try and legalise assisted suicide. Here's Lord Falconer and Giles Fraser discussing the bill, showing both arguments for changing the law.
The bill, which is currently in Parliament, says that if two doctors certify that somebody who's terminally ill has got the firm and settled intention that they want to take their own life, then they will be given a prescription which they've got to administer to themselves, which can end their life. My bill is only dealing with people who are imminently dying, as defined as having 6 months or less to live.
Here's my problem. I think, Charlie, you've got a tin ear for the real complexity of people who are dying and what happens when people are dying. Because I think what will happen emotionally is this. Many people will go, you know, it's actually a bit difficult for all the family, God bless them. I think it's best if I just walk off stage quietly.
I think you're completely wrong. I think the sort of situation that you describe, no, there would not be that firm and settled intention. Very, very many people wouldn't want to do this, but there is a small minority that are absolutely clear that this is what they want.
Charlie,
And why should they not have this option? Why should people go through that suffering when they don't have to?
So why are doctors against it? Why are people who
aren't against
it? The majority of doctors are against it. The disabled people are against it.
Some disabled people are against it. Some, they reflect society.
People who sit with the dying, like the clergy, we're against it.
Some clergy are in favour of it. Some are against it.
Charlie, we live in a society that tries to increasingly tries to keep death out of sight and out of mind. What I fear about your bill, it's just another move in that trying to push death aside because we're frightened of it, because we don't understand it.
Giles, I think your first point, this is trying to hide death in some way. It is quite the reverse. One of the effects of there being the debate about the bill is that people are talking so much more about how they die. I think it is a very, very good thing that people, before they die, express their wishes about how they would want to die. The experience of places where there is a bill like mine, actually as law, like Oregon, is that people become less frightened of death because they know that that option, the possibility of taking the prescription, is there for them, I think.
On your bill, you need two doctors to certify that it's someone's settled will to go through with this.
Yeah.
What expertise do doctors have to ascertain someone's settled will? I can see why a doctor has expertise in knowing whether the cancer's going to kill you or not, but these are not psychotherapists. These are not people who understand sort of family dynamics.
The judgment about whether or not you are somebody who've got a firm and settled intention to take your own life is something that people as a human being have got to make, and I think doctors are well qualified to do that.
It's a complicated thing, Charlie. It's really complicated.
It's a complicated thing, but there are many complicated things in life. The difficulty of making those judgments does not, in my view, lead to the conclusion that we should completely vacate the field and say this is too difficult.
It's extremely burdensome for someone to think, oh, I have this extra thing to consider. It might relieve the suffering of the people around me, or it to go really quietly. You're giving me all sorts of thoughts.
You assume, Giles, that those caring for somebody, the doctors or those who love them, and the person themselves, is not able to say, this is too difficult, I don't want to know about this, or I don't know what to do about it. If that was the attitude...
I'm sure that sometimes that'll happen.
And if that was the attitude, then of course this would not be a possibility, because the bill is clear. It's got to be a firm and settled intention. And you know
this is La Land.
It's not what you get so confused by, Giles, is that very, 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 very many people, whilst they're dying, are in a whole stage of uncertainties. This is not for them. It will not apply to the people that you are describing.
All sorts of people. I will be able to convince you very easily that it is my firm and settled will, whatever that really means.
Why would you do that if it wasn't your firm?
Because actually, I don't want my kids to see me suffering. Because I don't want the money to be draining. Because I don't want them. I don't want to be a bother to everybody. I don't want to be a bother to people.
But you'd really want to live. You'd really want to live.
No, and in the end,
would you be your position?
I think I might as well just do it because I don't want to be a bother to them. Do we want a society where we're actually having all of us decide that we don't want to be a burden to each other, so we might as well drift off? Actually, Charlie, I want to be a burden because I want them to be a burden to me.
But there is this group who will be clear, and it will be possible for an external person, a doctor, or the courts, if that was thought more appropriate, to make the judgment that that person is absolutely clear that they do not want to go through another few days, another few months of that. And there needs to be that option.
The bill fell following the Stage 1 debate on the 27th of May 2015. The bill received 82 votes against, 36 votes for, and 9 members did not vote. The UK law was not passed.
I think that Lord Faulkner made a brave attempt, following other people's attempts, to revise the law to permit people to finish their life when it was already well established that they were terminally ill.
Personally, I am against the legalisation of a process of assisted suicide, so just like the law permitting conditions under which a person can be helped to kill themselves, either singly or involving others. My personal beliefs flow from 2 main concerns. The first concern is one that is guided by my own religious beliefs, namely that life is given as a gift, and it is a gift that cannot be given away voluntarily, even if the person wishes to. Attempts to legalise suicide would create a potentially socially acceptable mechanism, allowing people to destroy the gift of their life. My second concern is that there could be a potential to abuse the process, no matter how rigorous or sophisticated a permissive legal regime might be to enable assisted suicide, and I worry about the impact on vulnerable people such as the elderly and disabled in particular.
I would not wish to see it authorised in the United Kingdom.
Well, I can understand why people would want to go down this particular legislative path. However, personally, if I were an MP, I could not vote for this particular proposal. I say this because, having even witnessed relatives dying of a terminal illness, the quality of life remains, and I do believe that we must unflinchingly treat those who are all with dignity and respect. This does not mean, in my opinion, ending their life.
I think that Lord Faulkner's assisted suicide bill was absolutely in the right direction, and I think that we should be taking that forward as legislation. It is unfortunate that too many MPs are not prepared to face down the prejudice. Obviously, for some people, there are very deep felt religious reasons why they are never going to agree to this. But I think for the vast majority of the population, once we have discussed what we're actually talking about, would be in agreement.
Under the current legislative framework, I do not believe that such a body could be created, certainly not in the form that Dignitatis currently has.
Okay, So the Lord Falconer's Bill fell at the first stage in the UK Parliament. From the Welsh perspective, we do not have the devolved powers in order to create an organisation such as Dignitas within Wales. So, the next big question is, what needs to be done next in order for us to be able to get a Dignitas clinic within Wales?
Well, we'd have to completely change the law. We'd have to have devolved powers over criminal and civil matters, jurisdiction over the laws, which at the moment prohibit assisted suicide. I think it would be many years before we're going to get that, because even at the moment we're discussing the draft Wales bill, but even if we were able to include the powers to legislate on this matter, it won't be before 2021 that we'll actually have the Wales Act coming into force, and then we'd obviously then have to persuade a majority of people in the Assembly that this was an appropriate thing to do.
There would need to be a dramatic change in legislation and policy. Additionally, I suspect that the legislators would need, and I cannot see how this would occur in the present climate, to win the hearts and the minds. This is such a diverse and controversial topic. I do not believe that the people of Wales want to dramatically change the way that life itself is understood in legislation at this point in time.
I also believe that devolution for Wales is the best way of preserving the United Kingdom. So I would hope that in time we would have much greater responsibility in those areas. We already have responsibility for health and social services. It'd be a natural progression. And I think that as the Assembly, as it were, matures in terms of the debates that it has, and it builds up a body of law, it would be completely correct.
During the time of the interview with William Graham, Alan Cairns became the new Secretary of State for Wales. This means that this could be beneficial for the Wales Bill, allowing the Welsh Government control over criminal law, so that an assisted suicide clinic can be opened in Wales.
The Wales Bill, the previous Secretary of State, Stephen Crabb, who's done enormous work to try to get this bill forward. One of the things you must remember also is we're still in the early stages. There's still a lot of amendment to go through, there's still debates to have, there's a great deal more evidence to assimilate, and I'm sure Alan will look very carefully, not only at what happens in the House of Commons, but also the way in which the First Minister here has put forward some suggestions, rather late in the day in my view, but there are plenty of opportunity to get the bill right, and Alan is the man for the job. I think one of the complications has been that it was published so close to the Assembly election. I think probably it would have been better left until after the election. In essence, there's a lot of thought gone into what has been proposed. There are some things that are not acceptable to some of the political parties here. That'll have to be very rigorously exposed and also taken into account sort of the legalistic part of the Constitution. And I would hope that there's no particular rush. The importance is to get this right for Wales. We've had, in a way, more constitutional bills in the last 15 years, well, I predict the actual setting up the last 18 years, than probably in the previous 100. So let's get it right. Let's get a large measure that it is entirely by consent.
So if or when the Wales Bill is passed, in approximately 3 to 4 years, that is when the real work can be done in Wales to change the law on assisted suicide.
The establishment of a Dignitas clinic in Wales, always with the caveat that it needs to be with safeguards to ensure that this really is people's choice.
So we, as a group, looked at Dignitas and the costs involved. One of the costs was a membership fee of
certainly, if the bill became passed, then there would be a need to recognise that that became the law, and that we were absolutely certain that a Dignitas-style clinic was properly, rationally run, and was organised in a very satisfactory way, so that it was absolutely transparent in its operation.
So the big question is, should an assisted suicide organisation be in the hands of the public sector, such as the NHS, the private sector, such as the Vale Hospital, or even the voluntary sector, such as Dignitas, which is located in Switzerland?
If such an entity were to be created, it should exclusively be under the control of the state. That's to ensure effective oversight, democratic accountability, and medical standards. Although, of course, I hope that such a body is not created at all.
I would have thought it had to be a little bit of a hybrid, but principally to have the necessary transparency. It probably would need to be at least publicly controlled. And I think nobody would want to, as it were, to make a profit from such a thing. It would be, as it were, a company that would cover its costs, shall we say, and perhaps provide any profit, as it were, perhaps for research generally into medical conditions. I don't think the public opinion would stand for a highly profitable company making money in that way.
I don't think it should be a private thing. I think it should be either voluntary or public, because I think the profit motive should not come into this. I think it should be a right for individuals, for all individuals, regardless of their financial circumstances.
From talking to the Welsh Assembly members, they said one of the most important things was the public's view. Therefore, we went out into the public with questionnaires to get some information. Here are the results. 82% of the participants suggested that an assisted suicide organisation should be opened in Wales. A further 52% believe it should be run by the public sector, such as the NHS. And finally, 41% did not know the difference between assisted suicide and euthanasia.
The following interview with a member of the public really depicts what the public's view is on assisted suicide and having an assisted suicide facility within Wales.
I think if there's no hope, and if the alternative is a number of days or weeks where a person is in insufferable pain, then I think it would be, personally, I think it would be justifiable in those circumstances. I think it would be more humane.
We are back in the studio to further discuss opening an assisted suicide facility in Wales. To summarise what we have found so far, right now it is not possible to open an assisted suicide facility in Wales. Changing the law is highly controversial, as showed in the debate by Lord Falconer and Giles Fraser, and this is just one hurdle to jump. Following on from this, both of the Assembly members that we interviewed, William Graham and Jenny Rathbone, stated that it is important to gain public support. Our findings from our questionnaire conducted on the streets of Cardiff and Swansea showed that the majority of Welsh people would support the notion of adopting an assisted suicide facility in Wales. Our findings are backed up by dignity in dying research carried out across Britain, as 82% of the respondents said they wanted their right to die in the UK. Wales needs to be more devolved powers, in particular in criminal law, in order to draft a Welsh assisted suicide bill for the creation of an assisted suicide facility in Wales. Both of our AM interviewees discussed the Wales bill that is currently being drafted to include criminal law as a devolved power in Wales. Jenny Rathbone stated that the Wales bill would not come into practice for at least another 3 to 4 years. It can take roughly 1 to 2 years for a law to pass through either the UK Parliament or the Welsh Assembly. Realistically, we wouldn't see such a facility within Wales for at least another 10 to 15 years. Since the consultation centre would be based in Swansea, it is easily accessible with good transport links. Taking into consideration both AM's interviews and questionnaire results, the organisation would be a hybrid between the public sector, the NHS and the private sector, with profits being reinvested into research regarding the illnesses and diseases driving people to use assisted suicide facilities. The cost of the patient would be subsidised by the NHS because, as Jenny Rathbone disclosed to us, it is a costly procedure. So this way it will reduce costs for the NHS but still make it available to people wishing to use the facility. However, it will be judged on a case-by-case basis. One argument that prevails is that the GP doctors of patients wishing to end their lives are put under pressure to grant death to patients. However, we recommend that doctors who wish to support the right to die can become specialists and be solely based at the centre by their own choice. Although there is a public support for such facilities in Wales, it is highly controversial and lots of campaign and lobbying to our Assembly members and members of Parliament will be needed in order to bring about this change. Death is the biggest event of your life, but should we be able to decide?
One of my closest friends went to Dignitas.
Bob Cole has decided to die. It'll happen here in Switzerland. He's chosen the day and the time.
Switzerland has become a hotspot for suicide tourism.
A grandmother in Wales who has motor neurone disease. I'm on a mission to kill myself.
Hundreds have gone to Switzerland to end their own lives. But today, a bill that might have allowed them that right here in Britain was debated inside Parliament.
I've cared for my husband for the last 5 years. And I saw, and he was dying for 5 years. And I saw when life changed to being a burden. And therefore this bill should not be ended here in this chamber today.
I don't support the assisted dying proposals that have come out of the other place. I don't support euthanasia. I know there are imperfections and problems with the current law, but I think these can be dealt with sensitively and sensibly without having a new law that actually brings in euthanasia. And as she says, I think the problem is the pressure that is then put on frail elderly people to take a decision that actually they might not want to go ahead with.
Her death does appear to have been a case of assisted suicide.
Gardaí are now investigating not only how the woman died, but whether or not someone was with her at the time. Any person convicted of helping her to commit suicide could be jailed for up to 14 years.
You have over 80% of our population who vote have actually said that they wish to actually have something like this in place. Okay, it's okay for the rich. The rich, if they become terminally ill, they could go abroad.
I wish the country would change the law.
What is the purpose of forcing people to suffer at the end of their life if they're having a very unpleasant ending?
So it is possible that an assisted suicide organisation can be opened in Wales within the next 10 to 15 years. However, it is down to the members of Parliament as well as the Welsh Assembly Government to listen to the people.